Welcome to this episode of On the Light, a podcast dedicated to illuminating the profound teachings and legacy of Yogacharya B.K.S. Iyengar. Today, we acknowledge Guruji's 10-year Punyatithi. Lee and I were able to sit down with Prashant as he tried to impart the greatness of his father and his life's work. At one point in our talk, he says that Guruji was as lofty as the Himalayas, and that if we can realize that, it will increase our gratitude multifolds. Please enjoy this special episode of On the Light. Thank you for meeting. We are at the 10th anniversary of Guruji's death. And as I've shared with you, my family is currently going through the process of living out the final days of a loved one. And those times that we spend, with them are very precious and can also be somewhat private. So I don't know, I was just wondering if you would be willing or comfortable sharing any of the memories that you have with your father and your guru on in his final days. Yeah.
Well, at the very outset, I should tell you that we all are teaching yoga. Now, we all teach yoga and we get satisfaction, contentment by our teachings.
Mm-hmm.
We get elation. We get kind of all the teachers, when they walk out of the class, they are definitely elated. It is because we can teach what we want to teach. We can teach what we know and what we want to teach. Now, this is an advantage to all those who are in the profession of teaching. They get that a professional delight, professional satisfaction, professional contentment, because we can teach what we want. Now, when even in the institute, I told Abhijata once that know that the condition that you are in, you are free to teach what you want to teach. And you can teach what you know. And all that you know, you can be teaching. So we get a satisfaction, contentment out of our teachings. And sometimes, as I said, that we may not get the contentment out of our practice, because many times we finish our practice and we have not done satisfactory practice. That is below our expectations. We expected something, but our practice was discounted. And sometimes we get our practice and get the contentment because we do something unexpected, not expected, etc. But suppose little niggle here and there, little problem here and there, which is a common feature in our life, particularly when we are going to do asanas. We come across this, that some kind of indisposed condition is there, some kind of problem is there. If not in prime age, in later age, it definitely crops up. So many times we are not satisfied with our practice because we don't reach the line of satisfaction. And sometimes when we reach, we are satisfied with our practice, that we got something unexpected, etc. But as far as teaching is concerned, more often we get contentment out of teaching. We are satisfied with our teaching because the students come and give us feedback, and the students give good feedback. We think we are successful teachers. Every student comes and says, "Oh, wonderful, wonderful, exclusive, marvelous." And if we get these predicates, so the teacher is elated. So I said, usually certificates are given by the teachers to students But in the professional setting of the teachings, the students certify the teachers, you are excellent, you are marvelous, you are incredible. So this is faced by many of the teachers, and that elates their ego and gives the satisfaction to the I-ness. Yes, my teaching was acknowledged. My teaching was well received. We get the feedback. And I've seen many of the teachers have the habit of asking the class after the class is over, how do you feel? So they try to provoke them to make expression that it was incredible, marvelous, etc., etc. So I said, I have seen many of the students have this habit after the class asking them, how do you feel? Or look at them with mere glance, very mere glance at the students will know that we have to respond. So I said, we get a lot of satisfaction by teachings. And basically we can teach what we want. This is what is characteristic of our day teaching now. I will teach what I want to teach. I will teach what I like to teach. And I will try to teach all that I know. So I can get a kind of a showcase for my knowledge. I can be showcasing my knowledge when I teach. But I said, let me bring to your notice. I told Abhijata, and now I tell all of you, let me tell you, this was not the condition that Guruji had. He could not teach what he wanted to teach. He could not teach to make a display of his knowledge, showcasing his knowledge that what he knows, he would be making a showcasing of it. Basically, he could not teach what he wanted to teach for a long, 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 long time. Ever since he commenced teaching in, say, late 1930s, 30, 39, 40, when he came to Pune. So he had to teach what students wanted him to be teaching. And most of the students earlier times, formative times of his teaching, they had some problems and they wanted their problems to be catered. Physical problems, anatomical problems, physiological problems, systemic problems, psychological problems, emotional problems, mental problems. They wanted solution to their problems. They expected pathy, a kind of pathy from him. And for quite some time, he had to cater their needs. And most of them had health problems, health needs, physical to mental. And he had to cater them. Now, as I have often said, that his practice was totally different. And many times I said, I hope the people have taken in right spirits. Usually we say it is ideal to walk the talk and talk the walk. Now that's idealism that we have embraced, that we should walk the talk. In case of Guruji, he could not be teaching what he was practicing. And that is why he umpteen number of times brought to notice of the students that why I practice, I am a philosopher. None of the students were keen to know or keen that Guruji should open out that portal as to what is his practice. So once and when he went to West, he went to propagate the subject of yoga, and he thought propagation of yoga will be best done by turning out teachers. So they will dedicate their life to yoga rather than looking for some other profession, vocation, etc. So he encouraged the Western students to take up teachings, and he taught them that particular trait or that particular aspect, which can be imparted to people for worldly wellness, worldly well-being. So therefore, Guruji in the beginning also wrote articles such as Yoga for One and All. One and all means what? You might be in any trade, any profession, any vocation. You can still take the yoga and see that it complements your profession, vocation, trade, art, whatever. Like, for instance, if I may say so, he did not teach Minhin yoga to learn yoga. He did not teach Minhin for him to know what is yoga, learn what is yoga, become student of yoga. Same is the case with all those celebrities whom he taught. Clifford Curzon, J. Krishnamurti. So they had some needs and they wanted to take help of Guruji for their problems to be addressed, served, catered, mitigated. So Guruji could not really teach them yoga. So for quite some time it took place that way. But later in the West, when he thought yoga should be propagated, it should go to nook and corner of the world, he rightly thought that the Western mind, where there is a lot of empiricism in the Western culture, scientific mind, because the scientific revolution had taken place some 200-300 years back. So the Western mind was more scientific. And therefore, there was that empiricism, empirical faculty working, empirically trying to perceive something, empirically try to crystallize something. So lots of empiricism in the West because the culture was totally different. So he realized culture is totally different. And therefore he thought that the Westerners, if they are encouraged to become teachers, they might dedicate their life to yoga. I wonder if he had made a kind of a rule that you should only learn yoga and not teach yoga. I don't know how many of the Western people would have stuck to him. So they were motivated. He had to motivate them, enthuse them. They should be spirited to pursue yoga. And he thought he goes there for a couple of days and couple of weeks, or at the most 3 months in a year to various parts. So he could not really present the essential yoga because that needs little cultural background. Imagine what you Americans were, Canadians were, Britishers were, Europeans were in 1960s and 70s. So therefore, and as he was also almost told officially that don't bring your philosophy of the East. We want something which is good for physical fitness, physical well-being, mental well-being. So do you just cater the subject of yoga, which is good for anyone, whether Occidental or Oriental, of various economic strata, social strata. Everyone needs this wellness and well-being and physical health. It's not that the poor need and rich don't need, or vice versa. It's not that the stupid needs and intelligent doesn't need and vice versa. No, nothing like that. All human beings, that's one of the basic fundamental needs for mankind, anywhere in the world. So therefore, he started that yoga, which is for one and all. In one of his articles, if you have read in Yoga, Ashtadala Yoga Mala, so somewhere he mentions a musician can be better musician. A Christian can be better Christian. A sportsman can be a better sportsman. A businessman can be a better sportsman. Now, what is that? That means it is physical wellness, well-being, physical wellness, well-being, fitness. So he did not expect them to really embrace the philosophy of yoga, but just take that aspect of yoga, which is for good for mankind of any strata and every strata. So yoga for health. This became Bob world. Yoga for health, physical health, mental health, emotional health, any kind of health. And he had to dedicate most of his time in teaching for this purpose. So he could not be teaching what he really was practicing. He was practicing yoga. He was not trying to cure his problems and try to go for physical wellness and mental wellness and physical well-being and mental well-being. He was practicing yoga for the sake of yoga. And that's why he said, when I practice, I'm a philosopher. Now, he could not be imparting that kind of yoga, which is philosopher's yoga or philosophical yoga or philosophized yoga. So he had hardly any chance where he had specialized. So imagine, I am qualified, well qualified in mathematics. I have PhDs of mathematics. But if I am offered a clerical job in a commercial setup, will I not be choked? Because I am an earnest student of mathematics. I have pursued mathematics. I have dedicated myself to mathematics. I have qualified myself in mathematics, but I have been offered clerical job. See the amount of discontent that would be there. I am qualified in one trade and I am taking as an activity of life in something which is not my cup of tea. So the fitness yoga, wellness yoga was not his yoga, but he had to teach that yoga year after year after year, decade after decade, decade after decade. So later, maybe after 1980s, 90s, he started making the students aware of that. When I teach, I'm a philosopher. When I teach, I'm a scientist. When I practice, I'm an artist. And when I practice, I'm a philosopher. So he was trying to inject the worm into the minds of the students as to what is this threefold yoga. But none of them really pursued, because it's not that everyone wanted to demonstrate. Not everyone had a fit body to be demonstrating yoga. It's right, perfect that they did not ask for what is the art in yoga that you practice when you demonstrate. They knew that we are not going to demonstrate. We don't have bodies to demonstrate. We don't have conditions to demonstrate. So not even 1% students were demonstrators. There were only few who were good at demonstration, and they try to practice yoga of that kind. Most of them took up the teaching of yoga, Guruji's teachings. So Guruji, scientist as a teacher. So scientific approach, empirical approach, the cause and effect relationship, that the effect in the form of physical mental wellness should be empirically testified. You have to feel that you feel better, you are better, you have become better, or you have become fitter, or you can at least imagine that you can become fit in some time, sooner or later. So empiricism is very much there. Otherwise, in scientific realm, you won't be pursuing. So that was more impressive. Guruji's teachings are very, very, very scientific. And that's how you also get that impression in light of yoga, where he described asanas, technique, effects, etc. And then the remedial part of it, that this asana is good for that, this asana good for this ailment, that ailment, this clinical condition, that clinical condition. So the world was impressed. The West was impressed. Oh, this is very, very, very scientific. While he could not really teach what he really wanted to teach. I have also given this example sometimes. I am a PhD in English, double PhD in English, and you are making me to teach primary school English. What will be my plight, fate, reaction? That I am not allowed to teach commensurate with my qualifications. I have to teach primary school, middle school, while I am double PhD in English or mathematics. So Guruji could never get a chance to teach which is of his qualification. He had to come down every time. So there was a definitely tumult in his mind, because what he was practicing, he knew that it is essential yoga, quintessential yoga. It is the traditional yoga. It has that purity. It has all those uh, noble components. While what he had to teach was discipline and the physical culture aspect of yoga, and how one can become a teacher. This came in later part of his life, that he had to teach for the Westerners to become teachers. He did not do that in India. He did not formally teach anyone to become teachers. Take any of the senior teachers that you have from India, Birjus and Javas and Zubins and whoever you know about. He did not teach them formally. While in the West, he had to do that. So it was all formalized. So much of the energies was lost in formalizing. And then reappraisal, changing all those. After some years, make some modification, make some changes in syllabus, etc. So he was engaged in that, where there was hardly any essential yoga. So if I were in his place, I would have felt that my condition is something like fish out of waters. That I cannot be teaching what really I want to be putting across, what I want to be teaching, etc., which I get the opportunity now after Guruji's the whole structural work. I am able to mount myself up and I have freedom to teach what I want to teach. So this, all his students should understand that Guruji was overqualified to be teaching all his students. So we were all fortunate to have a teacher like him, but we should sometimes put a question, was he fortunate to have students like us? We are so selfish that we only want to have our fortunes. We want to be fortunate. We want the fortune to come our way. So we all claim that we are very, very, very fortunate to have Guruji in our life. Many times I have questioned myself. Yes, I am fortunate to be having him as a father. But is he fortunate to be having me as a son? So we students should also have this aspect in our thought process. No doubt we are fortunate, undoubtedly fortunate. But was he fortunate to have students like we, ourselves? So what must be uh, tumult in him? What must be discontent in him? Yet, because he was philosopher, he did not allow the discontent to bubble up and come to surface. He took content in what he did. This is the philosophy that he practiced. Look at the contentment in what you do and try to be contented in what you do. Although you might not be doing that is giving you contentment, you should be contented. So that is one of the Santosha principle of niyamas. So that side of the Guruji's life, I think we should all take cognizance of. that will increase our gratitudes to him multifolds. If we think that we were deserving and we got him, then it won't be a proper gratitude that we have. So Guruji was magnanimous. I would not have been so magnanimous. I'm still not that magnanimous. But Guruji was. That he was presenting himself as a teacher at a discounted value. Whereas we want to present ourselves at a premium value, or at least face value. We don't want to be given any credit which is below our face value. We want at least face value, and more often we want above face value. Guruji did not get that in his life. Yet, he did not give room for discontent. This is because of the shield of philosophy in his mind, which kept them at bay. Those who had not inculcated philosophy would not have had any shield, and they would have certainly reacted, and they would have certainly had the grudge or a kind of sorrow or agitation that I did not get my due. And this was indeed case of Guruji. He did not get his due. It was well below that level, yet because of his philosophy, he never made word feel about it. He never allowed that to surface his mind. He kept it. The philosophy kept that all at a very deep depth of his mind, any discontent. He did not suppress it. But then he had the genuine contentment in his mind because of the philosophy that he practiced. And therefore, he required his yoga to be a philosophical practice. It is because the world was not suitable for him. But he never made people feel that is the case. So all those who saw him, they saw he was absolutely contented. He's very, very positive in mind and not having melancholy. Never ever. Never ever. But I sometimes imagine if I were in his place, I would not be having this composure. If I am every time presenting myself under my face value, below face value, I am recognized at below face value, I would not have put up with it for a long, long time. Maybe for a couple of times, maybe a day or two we can put up, but not lifelong. So I'm trying to put across this fact about his life, which usually people will not be able to catch and understand and cognize. Even the students won't be able to cognize. But this is the fact. If we put ourselves in his place, then we should know how we would have reacted, and then we know that he was as lofty as Himalayas. We would not have been like that. So I will conclude with a final statement that I am qualified for a particular subject. So I'm a particular caliber, intellectual caliber, etc., etc. And if I'm made to do as a sweeper and mopper as economic activity, I'm a professor, and then I'm engaged in a economic activity of sweeper, mopper, or clerk, etc., etc. The amount of discontent that would boil in us, and that would explode. It will be, can be volcano often. But in that case, his case, it did not happen. He never got his due. He could never showcase or communicate. He only told us that when I practice, I am a philosopher. But nobody bothered to know what is this philosophy and what philosophy must have made to him. We only say that he was practicing regularly and that's why he kept lifelong fit. We only saw his practice. Again, that's an empirical plane. We look at his practices. What was going internally, which required a scan, which required imaging. Like today, we have something as MRI, which is imaging. So that we don't have, because we are so empirical people. Seeing is believing, seeing is believing, seeing is believing. We are caught in this. So nobody could really assess what he was. So he was a great man in the world. What gave him greatness? Because he became a celebrity. That's why I have said in that book that his assessment in the books of gods is totally different than his assessment given by the world. The world says he was celebrity. He was a great man. Great man to walk on the surface of the earth. Great man to walk on the planet. His achievements. So his achievements were dazzling for us, absolutely dazzling. What he did in his life. So this we call as the worldly attainments. These are all worldly attainments. He wrote that light on yoga, which is still being sold like hot cakes. Millions and millions of copies, multi-million copies are sold. Even that light on yoga, of which I am quite volcanically, I am a volcano. I react like a volcano, which you all have heard that light on yoga is magnum opus of Iyengar yoga. It indeed boils my blood. Some journalist, he thought he is eulogizing, praising Guruji, eulogy to Guruji. He said his light on yoga is magnum opus of Iyengar yoga. Light on yoga is Bible of yoga, because that time Christianity had, of course, much kind of gravity. So that's how the journalist reviewed his book. And the entire yoga Iyengar fraternity believed that it is magnum opus of Iyengar yoga. That is why one of the steps I took in certification, if you look at the certificates, old certificates said quality certified for such and such level. The teachings based on light on yoga and light on pranayama. Then, after Guruji passed away, I told Abhijata that it is not right. He went light years ahead of light on yoga, light on pranayama. Those were actually antiquated books, because he was galloping, and that therefore he had so many lights to cast on yoga. The series of light on, light on, light on, light on, up to light on life. That means the yoga was for life. He lived yoga. Yoga is for life. In the sense, the philosophy puts it as to what the life is. It's not just healthy, long life, happy, delightful life, no problem in life. That is not ideal life. That is not iconic life. Somebody having, good amount of affluency, good amount of social status, good amount of worldly happiness, worldly delight. That's not iconic life. We have to understand what the life is from the perspective of metaphysics. What the life is. So that light on series went up to light on life. I am pretty sure that if he had lived further more years, more lights would have come. It would not have ended with light on life. Because life is reality and there is reality beyond life. So he would have certainly penned down something after that. But he did not get the opportunity. Despite his long life and despite his very, very, very extremely occupied life, there was no moment which was idle. He was never idling in his life. He kept engaged himself. He was busy. And despite that, he could not show that his line to his students. That is, yoga is philosophy. So world over, Iyengar yoga is going as a consumer product, well received. And of course, that is a wonderful thing. That's how yoga should go. Like, we have music, classical music and pop music, classical music, light classical music. There are so many grades in music, but it goes to folk music ultimately. So he also propagated folk yoga. Folk yoga, that is for everyone of any intellectual strata, whether you are at below par, yet yoga can be going there. That's why I said sometimes he was offered to teach in a school. So he thought he would get cream of students. But the principal of the school said, I have a set of notorious students, troubleshooters in the classrooms, dullards and troubleshooters, nuisance to the classroom. Will you be able to handle them? Now, is it fortunate to be having such students under him? But he took that as a challenge. He said, of course, oh yes, because he said, let me open out another portal in my pursuit of yoga, study of yoga, how yoga can go to those vendors. They were actually vendors in the school. They said they are creating lots of problems. Can you handle? And Guruji successfully handled. Now, anybody with the caliber of Guruji should have said, I give you cream of students. Can you give them, kind of grace them so that they will go gallop in their ways? But these backbenchers were given to him, whether they can come at par with average students. So they wanted below average students to come to average level students rather than above average students to scale higher. These are Guruji got in his life. So in one perspective, I won't say Guruji was fortunate. He never had this grudge. He never said, he never gave this feeling to anyone. He gave feeling to everyone that he has accomplished life. He is contented. He was indeed contented. He was not lying. He found contentment. He found santosha in what he did. He understood that I will not be able to impart the quintessential aspects of yoga, essential aspects of yoga, because he was in the foundational work. So he said, when I am working on foundation, I cannot be thinking of the superstructure and the acme of the building, the top of the building, the tip of the building. So I had to work on foundation. So he identified what is his duty in the world. And that's how the philosophy did not allow any discontent, agitation, irritation to really come up. So now I put a question to all you teachers, that those who are teaching yoga, if you are only made to teach spastic children, what we call as children with special abilities, and you are not allowed to teach any average human being, what will be your plight? You will not like, you would like to have freedom to teach the student that you want to teach. You will say, you don't come to my class. I don't want you in my class. So you will have you will have a choice and selection to see that we are able to have satisfaction in our teachings. But Guruji had to open doors for everyone. He did not close his doors for anyone. Anyone can come in. So today we will say, well, you go to a teacher who is below my caliber, you learn that 2, 3, 4 years and then come to me. All the arrangements we have made like that. So there are so many teachers who are not teaching beginners now. They have trained some teachers to teach beginners. So they will say, study with that teacher whom I have trained, do for 8, 10 years. Let me see if you are interested, then I will teach. All this we can do. I will candidly say myself, concede. I'm not teaching beginners in my institute. Here at Pune, I'm not teaching any beginner. I can do that today. We could not do that 40 years back. Every month we had newcomers in our class. Every month we had newcomers. That went until 1980, 89, 88, 89. It's only after my accident, the class institute had a rationalization and some kind of changes. So we started having beginners classes. Then later came intermediate level 1, then came intermediate level 2, etc., etc. So people cannot creep into my class unless they have gone through all that. Now I have this privilege today. I did not have this privilege 40 years back, I know. Guruji never had in his lifetime. Guruji never had this lifetime. So he was trying to prove to the doctors, the scientific community, how yoga is scientific, how yoga is scientific. Because nobody was prepared to understand how yoga was philosophical. Now today the condition has come that the people are interested to know how yoga is philosophical subject and not merely a scientific subject. Yoga is not a scientific subject. It's not there is no empirical uh, diameter to operate. We deal with human mind. You cannot be so empirical about human mind. Anyway, uh, I don't know whether it's a bitter statement to make that he was underprivileged teacher and the students were overprivileged. Please take it in right perspective, in right spirits. I don't mean to offend the entire student clan, which I am also one of them. I include myself, but you will not include myself there. That's the fact. We should have been better caliber students to be really having him as a teacher. But that did not happen. But however, it is because of his philosophy in practice, philosophical practice, philosopher while practicing, etc. He had protected his mind, psychic consciousness. One who is not philosopher at all will be uh, totally disinsulated to all these discontents. It will easily reach us. Anybody hurting us, anybody offending us, it is easily hurting us. We are not insulated. Somebody intimidating, somebody dishonoring us, disrespecting us, somebody looking down upon us. We are not insulated. We are completely disinsulated, and therefore all those shocks will reach us. But Guruji, because he was philosopher, he was insulated. So the generation after generation hereafter at least should try to identify that aspect of yoga, what he was practicing, which is yoga doesn't have a philosophy, it is a philosophy by itself. Otherwise, there is philosophy to any vocation. You can be a lawyer, there is philosophy to be attorney. You might be a physician, there is philosophy to be a physician. Any occupation, any business even has a philosophy. What is that philosophy? Morality, ethicality. But yoga itself is philosophy. Yoga doesn't have philosophy. Yoga itself is philosophy. So what he was practicing is something that we need to have imagination, for which we need certain education to be imagining. So even the old generation students, I want them to take into that aspect on the anvil. Which Guruji said, while I practice, I was philosopher, but they were all dazzled by his teaching. He was scientist while he was teaching. He was teaching. So let me be a scientist. Let me be scientific. And all teachers want to be scientific teachers so that they can prove to the world what I do is right. So that will be all in the field of empiricism, that something will be right and something will be wrong. That doesn't mean that what is right empirically is essentially right. Or what is empirically wrong, it doesn't mean that it is essentially wrong. There is something beyond empiricism. Meta-empirical world is there. So I want the students to turn towards that. Yoga required the expounders and propounders were not physical trainers. Let us question ourselves, what yoga are we teaching? We are almost physical trainers. Patanjali was not a physical trainer. Yagnevalkya was not physical trainer. Gorakshanath, Matsyendranath were not physical trainers, but our yoga is so physical. And we call ourselves as yoga teachers, but we are not more than trainers. In the physical culture, we require trainers. You don't say the school teacher is a trainer. Why? But you say somebody is a trainer because he's in physical culture. So the trainer doesn't have a specific meaning, but see how we have made the usage. Physical culture means there's a trainer. You don't say physical culture, you have a teacher, you have a guru, a trainer. So what we teach, do we need Patanjali in our teachings? In what we teach, do we need Gyaneshwars? Do we need Yagnevalkyas? Do we need Vasishthas and Vishwamitras? We don't need them. So we should have this inquiry. What is it that we are putting across as yoga? Sometimes I said in the class, after there's a mechanical ritual to have invocations. Once the invocation is over, we have nothing to do with Patanjali. Right leg out, left foot in, harden, tighten, straighten, stretch, elongate, rotate, pull, push. Stay there. Exert your ego for you to stay resoluteless ego. So we should be little critical about what we are pushing as yoga. When Guruji gave us little clue that why I was practicing, I was philosopher. Then what was that yoga? So we must have reappraisal of these statements. As often as we can do, each student should do on one's own. What is meant by yoga? Why Patanjali is a propounder, expounder? Why Yagnavalkya is propounder, expounder? Why Jnaneshwars and Yagnavalkyas were propounders and expounders? They were all yogis. What was their yoga? So what was Guruji's yoga, which he did in the microcosmic universe within him? We only looked at the Guruji is doing yoga with his body. They all wanted to see his body. Watch his practice. Watch his practice. See him practicing. What did you see? Photogenic yoga. Photogenic asanas. Scientific asanas. Geometrically perfect, precise asanas. But what he was doing internally, asanas are iconographic positions. I have described this in my book. You can read about that. Asanas are iconographic positions. Asanas are archetypal positions and not photogenic positions, not healthogenic positions. We are trying to get health out of our positions. We want to do Shirshasana so that we gain health. We want to do Sarvangasana so that we gain health. So we are making it healthogenic. Then we are making presentation worthy, photogenic. We don't want our asanas to be non-photogenic. We want to say that if you bring a set box, it should be precise geometry. So Iyengar Yoga means precision, perfection. What is really meant by it? Alignment. What is meant by alignment? For a layman, common man, what is alignment? Postural alignment. Nobody thinks of mind alignment, but they will see the body alignment. Well-aligned position, yes, good asana. So we must have a deeper inquiry about what yoga he practiced and not just yogalize what yoga he taught. That will be misleading. So let's try to peep into classical yoga, essential yoga, which came from sages, which came from yogis, jnanis, realized souls, and not physical trainers, and not physical perfectionists or body precisionists. Yoga is for chitta, yoga is for mind, and therefore we have to slightly peep into classical yoga. Finally, I will say Guruji's lifetime yoga was primarily there to fight the misconceptions which were in his times. That yoga is for sannyasis, yoga is for those who have abandoned family life, those who have renounced material life, renounced family life. So this was the idea in India about yoga. So the misconception was that therefore yoga was not meant for everyone. That's why he came with the Bob word, yoga is for everyone. Yoga is for everyone. Because the idea about yoga is that it is not for everyone. It is for exclusive few, spiritually evolved few. That was the idea prevalent. So he had to fight the misconception. Now, what is the misconception about yoga must be identified, and we have to fight that misconception, not the misconception that Guruji fought, because he successfully banished that misconception that was in the world at that time, 1940s. So understand, 80 years back. Now, what are the misconceptions in the world? So genuine Iyengar student or Iyengar follower should try to understand what is the misconception. Now, today misconception is yoga for fitness, yoga for wellness, yoga for well-being. That has become the misconception. Therefore, yoga should be part of your lifestyle. Every morning, do some yoga, 40 minutes, 45 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever. Devise and do some physical wellness program so that you will be physically fit. And then you can carry out nonsense of your life. So what are the misconceptions today? Yoga Day is celebrated all over the world. And what is the tagline? That you should be healthy. And the concept of health has gone little beyond body, and they say physical health, mental health, spiritual health. So what are the misconceptions which are prevalent in the world? We need to fight that. So one kind of yoga Guruji presented for that time illusions, that time misconceptions. Now we have different misconceptions. So we cannot be going the way he went. We should know only the principle that we see misconceptions. So what will you do? First of all, let's try to remain the misconception that we have within our own community, and then try to go out. Anyway, I hope I put across which is appropriate. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prashant ji.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
You know, I always, in spite of that, in spite of the fact that we were not qualified to appreciate Guruji for everything that he was, I take some comfort in knowing that he knew who he was and he knew what he knew. And I think that when...
So what I say, no, what we are teaching is nothing wrong. There is nothing to mend. There is nothing to do any different change or difference. I am not critical about what is going on as Iyengar Yoga. That has to be done. That should be done. But additionally, we need to do something that start pushing the concepts, precepts, ideas of the classical yoga. I will not say totally revolutionize your teaching. It is perfectly right so that it has appeal for global community. But gradually we have to make them students of yoga. Nobody comes as a student of yoga. They will come with some desires and aspirations and wants to be catered. Okay. But as a teacher, we have to slowly post these concepts, ideas for them to receive in a very, very discreet way. Should not give mega doses, but give magna doses, small doses, infant doses. But we must see that that essential yoga is somewhere brought in.
But I'm thinking about him.
I've written the books for the concepts of various concepts, precepts, ideas about yoga. How yoga is working for esoteric aspects in us, esoteric body, esoteric mind. So slowly these things should be pushed in the students' community by their teachers, for which they should become good students of yoga. So now I have this to say to Iyengar teachers, that you see that you become good students of yoga, which is eternal subject. Because Iyengar yoga was not there prior to B.K.S. Iyengar. It came after him. But he was practicing yoga when there was no Iyengar yoga. What yoga was he practicing? So that is timeless yoga. So let's try to understand timeless values, essential values, philosophical values, which are universal values, anytime, anywhere. So we should slowly we should become students of subject of yoga, philosophy of yoga, esoterics of yoga. We should become good students. So I have this only to tell teachers, become good students of the subject of yoga. You are doing wonderfully as a teacher, but become students of yoga. And that will slowly creep into your teachings as you assimilate those values. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for tuning in to On the Light. Today, I'd like to read this passage from page 265 from Light on Life. This whole book has been founded on a series of demarcations, the 5 sheaths, the 5 elements, their 5 subtle counterparts. It is a fruitful way to direct the quest toward the exploration of nature and the discovery of the soul. But in the back of our minds, we should not forget that all sheaths and elements, all obvious demarcations, whether between gross or subtle bodies, do not arise at all. All are interwoven in consciousness. Hence, the ultimate reach of yoga is the total transformation of chitta, consciousness, that pervades our whole being with awareness and that knows no frontiers. My hope is to have overcome the prejudice that Hatha Yoga is only physical and that it has nothing to do with the spiritual life. People have equated the practice of asana with physical practice. My life's work has been to show how, even from humble beginnings, this is a path that can lead the dedicated practitioner to the integration of body, mind, and soul. I hope you enjoyed this special episode. Our official start to the next season will be on September 2nd. I've been working on some great interviews over the summer and have more coming up in the fall. I appreciate all of you for listening and the positive feedback I have received. It really means a lot. So with that, until next time, shine bright.